There we go. Excellent. All right. So it sounds like we're all in action. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight, albeit virtually rather than face-to-face, for the Year 12 Parent Information Evening and the commencement of the final leg of your child's secondary education. At our live assembly on Monday, the college captains informed everybody that there were 294 days to go. So I suspect we're now down to 291, and believe me, they will fly past very, very quickly. My task tonight is an introduction, some personal reflections, and then to hand over to an intrepid team here of Mrs. Melinda Miles, our Director of Senior Secondary, Mr. Shane Bowden, our Director of Data and Strategy, Mrs. Penny Cummins, our Career Pathways Counsellor, and Mrs. Jenny Middleton, our Assistant Principal, Teaching and Learning and IT Guru for the evening. She'll be monitoring any questions, etc. that come in, and any typing errors in the response are solely hers. In the audience tonight, I'm sure there'll be some very seasoned and some very rookie Year 12 parents, and I know that the information that will be shared by my colleagues will be really valuable, so I really hope that you enjoy this evening. You may well be aware that the new Queensland education system is now in its third year, and the good news that everybody's becoming much more comfortable with the expectations of the system. The uncertainty brought on by big change has subsided, and we're now moving into that phase where everybody's really comfortable and understanding of the routine. As an educator, I'm actually quite pleased, particularly with the reduction in the amount of assessment that a Year 12 student is now expected to do. The result is that, of course, there's more time for learning and engaging with that learning. Even the scary external exams, I think, have turned out not to be anywhere near as daunting as many felt they would be. Students at CHAC have continued to do exceptionally well in their Year 12 year. About 44% of our students end up with an ATAR of 90 plus, which is approximately the same range of results as an OP 1 to 5. So we're really happy with that. And obviously these are a result of the two greatest assets that we have, which are our students, our teachers rather, and the way that they work together and connect and work towards that goal of best possible outcomes. It is the commitment of staff to support your students and assist them to be the best that they can be that are fundamental to what we do here at CHAC. After 3 attempts at being a Year 12 parent, you may consider me to be an expert, that I've seen it all, and that I have the perfect response to every situation. And that's certainly an illusion I would love to maintain. But the reality is, when it comes to family, when it comes to our own children, it's never, ever easy. While I can't give you all the answers, I can tell you that in the next 10 months, you will be a coach and a motivator, a sympathiser, a pacifier, a protector, a critic, a best friend, and probably innumerable other roles. And the biggest challenge will be working out which one of these you actually need to adopt at any particular point in time. The good thing is that you're not trying to do all of that alone, and you will hear at length tonight from our team about the support that is available for you and your children, whether it be classroom teachers, heads of house, heads of faculty, Ms Miles as our Director of Senior Secondary, and a number of other relevant staff, and I know that she'll be extending on that a little bit later on. The goal for us, and when I talk about us, it's us at the school, but you as parents at home, is to provide an environment where every student can be the best version of themselves. We're in it together, and we know that there's going to be a lot of emotional energy spent over this year, but it is about working together, it is about building trust, and it is about keeping open lines of communication. You know, because you'll have experienced it over the last few years, the genuine commitment of our staff to making sure that this is as successful year as it can be. And I know that we're all looking forward to that opportunity at the end of this year when we come together as a community to celebrate at the valedictory events that occur in November. I would encourage you to make connections with other CHAC families. I know the PNF are looking to expand their events this year so that there are more opportunities for families to get together and parents to get together and make connections. I know personally that for each of my children, I was really glad that I got to know their friends' parents, and they certainly were a great source of advice and unity when dealing with the challenges of teenagers. So for those PNF activities, please do watch out for messages that'll come via newsletters and other invitation forms. The CHAC Foundation is a separate arm of the college, and it's led by an energetic mix of current and past parents, and their goal is to assist in any way possible to provide great opportunities for our CHAC community. Their main project will be our sports centre, and we certainly look forward to talking more about that later. But they are the group that have introduced the sports wear that supporters have been wearing, the Foundation Wine Club, the annual Day of Giving, and they're currently in the process of developing a business directory app so that we can have an opportunity for CHAC families to be able to access other families in terms of work that they may have done at their house, etc. So please do stay in tune for that. And similarly, we're currently looking at a CHAC job site, which will be a place for local employers to advertise their positions to CHAC students that they can then apply for. And I certainly look forward to sharing more information about that in the coming weeks. That's probably enough for me for one night, because I know that the rest of the team have a lot of really relevant information to share with you. So again, thank you for your attendance tonight. It's great to see so many people online, and I'll now hand over to Ms. Miles and the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. A big welcome from me as well to everybody at home. It's hard to believe that your children are in year 12, the final year of school. I'm sure, just like me, you're all wondering where on earth has all that time gone. I'm looking forward to working with you and your children again this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at various events throughout the year. I'll begin by sharing with you some key dates for the year. This term, we've got our swimming and cross-country carnivals, and then the first exam block for the year, which is coming up shortly in week 4. This is a 2-day block, and Mr. Bowden has emailed the schedule for this last week. The highlight for term 2 is the formal, which will be held on Saturday, the 11th of June. There's already a great buzz amongst the student body with shopping for formal dresses and suits happening, and conversations about their mode of transport to the venue. There is also an exam block in week 2 and various music and sporting events throughout the term. Term 3 is always a busy one. Students have their final internal exam block at the beginning of this term, and then they finish the term with a mock exam block to prepare them for their external exams. Term 4 is a short one for our 12s, with our sport and music award evenings early in the term, their external exams beginning in week 4, and then their return to college together in week 7 for a week of farewells. On this slide, you can see the plan for the final week of school for our year 12s. There may be some changes once the QCAA publishes the EA schedule, the external assessment schedule. If we're lucky, we may gain an extra day for our 12s to be back together at school. But at this stage, though, it's a 3-day program beginning on Wednesday, the 16th of November. During this day, there's a special program for our 12s. We already have the Red Frogs booked in to speak with the students about Schoolies Week. And then that evening, we have the annual awards evening. The week finishes with a valedictory service on Friday, the 18th of November at St John's Cathedral, and then we finish off that night with the valedictory dinner. My role at the college encompasses both pastoral and academic student matters. From a pastoral perspective, I work closely with Mr. Pavish, our Assistant Principal, Administration and Pastoral Care, Mrs. Shelley McMahon, our Director of Junior Secondary, the heads of house, Brother Nathan, our college psychologists, and our nursing consultant. I'm pleased to inform you that we now have 2 college psychologists working with our secondary students, Amy and Alex. You can see their photos on the slide, and I've also put a photo of Sherelle, our nursing consultant, in case you haven't had the opportunity to meet her yet. I also oversee the Senior Secondary Chatcom program, as well as any pastoral, social and emotional issues that emerge. From an academic perspective, I oversee the academic progress of senior secondary students, work closely with Penny Cummins, our Learning Pathways and Careers Counsellor, Kate Horton, our Head of Inclusive Education as well. I'm the initial contact for Access Arrangements and Reasonable Adjustments, or ARA, and I work closely in this area with Kate Horton. I assist with Year 12 events and devise and manage the Senior Preparation Program, formerly called EPP, for those of you with older children. The Senior Prep Program has classes twice in a 7-day cycle, sharing a line with Life and Faith. A main objective for this subject in Year 12 is to give students space in their senior year where they can organise their study materials, study in small groups and breathe and relax, with at least one class per term assigned to physical activity or relaxation. This is also an avenue for Penny Cummins to disseminate QTAC and QCE information. A focus of the Year 12 Chatcom program is preparing students for next year and beyond. Throughout the year, they will hear from panels of past students and various guest speakers. The Chatcom program is not fixed, however, giving us the ability to change and respond to student needs and issues that arise. A focus of our pastoral program continues to be cyber safety, and this year we have Brett Lee joining us again. He is an expert in the area. He'll be coming to the college on Wednesday the 16th of March to address the students, and then he will hold a parent presentation that evening. I've been to a number of Brett's presentations in the past and can highly recommend coming along. His advice has helped me both as a teacher and a parent of adolescents. While at times confronting, his presentations provide lots of good information and useful tips to help our children navigate the cyber world safely. Another topic of increasing importance is sleep, and this was the topic of our most recent professional reading that our principal, Gary, sent to staff. It was alarming to read that Australian teens are the third most sleep deprived in the world, with more than 70% of Australian high school teens suffering from regular sleep deprivation. With the effects of sleep deprivation, including problems at school and problems with impulse control that can lead to risk-taking behaviours, the sleep crisis is of a great concern, and one that can be very tricky to navigate, especially as teens experience a shift in their sleep-wake cycle. On this slide, you can see some tips for creating a sleep routine, and I encourage you to open discussions with your child and work with them to help create a good sleep routine. Expectations of all students are clearly set out in the student diary. Year 12s are important role models. This means that they must always present themselves well, wearing the uniform correctly, with the correct haircut, jewellery requirements, socks, school shoes, and have their phones away in their locker during the day. Many students in Year 12 are already driving to school or will be very soon. There is a permission form at student receptions that students are to have filled out to inform Mr. Pavish of their intentions to drive to school. Students are able to park their vehicles on Krupp Road and the roads adjacent to the college, and we ask that they are considerate of our neighbours when doing so. For example, ensuring that their driveways are accessible and not parking in front of bins. We ask that students do not take student passengers in their car unless written permission has been given by parents and Mr. Pavish has been informed. For students to achieve their best this year, homework and study is a must. Such learning aims to enhance, consolidate and enrich the learning that occurs in the classroom. In Year 12, it is expected that students complete 2.5 to 3 hours of enhanced learning at home each night. Please note, though, that this will not always take the form of traditional homework, especially in the senior years. Students may be asked to review class notes, watch flipped classroom style videos, research, work on assignments, or complete specific activities. If your child says to you that they have no homework or study, this is not the case, especially this year. There is always revision and reviewing of class notes to do. It is important that a study space is created that is quiet and free from distractions. This means putting their phones away, which I know is a challenge for teens. The English faculty run workshops on Thursday lunchtimes, and the first of these begin next week on Thursday the 10th of February. Students wishing to attend these workshops should bring along issues of concern to work on and discuss. The maths faculty also run tutorials, and information for this will be provided to students shortly. I'll now pass you over to Mr. Shane Bowden, and I'll be back to see you again soon.
Thank you, Ms. Miles. Good evening. We will get my slides right. We'll start with an overview of the ATAR system because we've had a lot of questions about that leading up to tonight, and because obviously your child is in its home stretch for this year. So, as we're all aware, there are 4 units in the ATAR system. Units 1 and 2 are foundational, and students need to have obtained a satisfactory result in those units for each subject to obtain a QCE point for each. As Ms Cummins would have run through in the past, you need 20 QCE points to receive your Queensland Certificate of Education. Now, Unit 3 commenced in the beginning of Term 4, Year 11, so students are already well and truly in the middle of that summative year. Students will finish 4 pieces of assessment for Units 3 and 4, that's 3 internal pieces and the 1 external exam. And as Ms Miles mentioned, the external exams will be coming up in the beginning of Term 4 this year, and they go for a period of about 3.5 weeks. Maths science subjects contribute 50% of the overall result in the external exam, 50% in the internal assessment, whereas all other subjects, the external exam is only worth 25%. QTAC calculates the tertiary entrance ranks by comparing students' results across subjects, a process that you would know as scaling. So the external exams will be conducted here on campus. The QCAA, the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, provide a chief supervisor to oversee the process. I run the process from the school's perspective. Invigilators are also on site to supervise the exams, and they are members of the college community independent of the staff, so they are not teachers. Students are not required on campus when they do not have a scheduled exam. There will be 2 exams scheduled for each day, but the QCAA will aim to avoid popular combinations of subjects on the same day, such as physics and chemistry. In the rare occurrence there is a clash, there is processes in place when we liaise with the QCAA to ensure that those students sit all of their exams as close to the other members of that particular group as possible. Students will be familiarised with all processes relating to the exams into their lead up. A big part of my role, obviously, as my title suggests, is looking at data. Even in Year 12, analysing and using the data that is available to us is very, very important as we try and get those last little bits out of the home stretch that is Year 12. So as I've written up here, data is the starting point for conversations, planning and action around improvement to student learning and wellbeing. It's the evidence that decision making is based on and the basis for goal setting, strength and gap identification and planning. Also, it links directly to points 2 and 3 of our 2022 CHAC strategic focus. We use many different sources of data here at CHAC, and I've listed a few of them up here. Obviously, we have our reporting data, which are the reports that you receive twice annually from the college, our historical data, so our ATAR data over time, our OP data over time, and our NAPLAN data over time, continuous reporting, which I'll briefly talk about shortly, learning analytics data, our Orwell testing data, which is another set of external testing that we do in years 4, 6 and 10, our general characteristics data, otherwise known as learner behaviour data, such as study, focus in class, things like that, and primary specific data such as PM benchmarking and PAT testing, classroom observations, which is really important qualitative data, and many other sources of data that we use. One of these enhanced features of our learning analytics and our analysis that you guys are already familiar with is continuous reporting. Now, continuous reporting, we use this at the college here to give effective qualitative feedback, and you would all be familiar with that. With regards to this feedback, we look at a few different things. First of all, we make sure that we include a mix of positive and improvement information that will go to our students for them to analyse and look to use as they move on to other assessment pieces assessing the same sorts of skills. We also hope that parents are looking at this continuous feedback as well to engage in those discussions with their child. A few points to note with regards to continuous reporting. We have shifted the assessment point of truth to point in time feedback using this process. So what that means is rather than getting your feedback at the end of a reporting period, you're now getting feedback about a particular assessment item as it is being marked. This is really crucial in terms of being able to action any sorts of improvement information. There's also scope for students to record their own personal reflections about the assessment task and their results, which is evidence that they are actually learning from the feedback that was given to them. Class time is used for students to record this feedback in Learning Analytics, and the assessment task feedback is able to be accessed by students for the duration of their time at CHAC, allowing them to go back to teacher advice for similar tasks. This is something that I encourage the Year 12 students to be doing this year when they get tasked where those skills are similar to previous tasks that they've done in the past. The parent guide for accessing Learning Analytics is available via the CHAC website under Current Families, Links and Resources, General Links. And that is just where we'll find the Learning Analytics link on the homepage. You should all have your login details from last year. A strategic initiative introduced last year was data placemats. These placemats provide quick, easy access to the strengths, weaknesses and strategies required to plan and deliver lessons and support targeted teaching. They draw information from a range of internal and external data that you can see on the screen here, and they give a strong snapshot of class and student ability at any given point in time. Teachers review and develop their class placemats to support differentiation in the class and cater for students requiring adjustments. This remains the case for all Year 12 classes. As outlined at the top of this page, students should also be tracking their progress and be engaged in their own improvement process using the Learning Analytics data and having those conversations with their teachers and their parents. Finally, we also use a range of other data information to track student performance over time. This slide provides just some of the data that the curriculum leadership team and teachers look into to improve academic performance. It includes external and internal assessment results broken into criteria, looked at on the whole and compared to the state and similar schools. This information is analysed over time to give teachers good information around specific strengths and weaknesses within the curriculum, assessment and pedagogy of CHAC based on the characteristics of our students. The use of this data is ongoing. I'd now like to pass on to Ms Penny Cummins, our Learning Pathways and Careers Counsellor.
Good evening, everyone. I should be a familiar face, having met with your students in ChatCom and in personal conversations throughout years 10 and 11. In Year 12, our focus becomes reviewing career goals, and I'll have some advice on that shortly. Looking at university and course prerequisites, cut-offs and eligibility, and this is particularly important because some courses will have application requirements like portfolios or statements long before the release of ATARs in December. I'll also be working with those students that are pursuing alternative pathways or work-based pathways. Lots of apprenticeships and traineeships are advertised towards the end of the year. But students in Year 12 seeking those need to be researching at this early stage and certainly making sure things like resumes, which were developed in Year 11, but making sure that those resumes are up to date. QTAC applications, I'll talk about QTAC in a moment, but QTAC applications become very important in September when students will need 6 preferences, ideally 6 preferences, and I'll certainly be working with students to come up with those course preferences in order to submit those applications. My other, roles, I might be working with your student if they are attending TAFE this year or participating in other vocational programs like school-based apprenticeships. And we do have a couple of students that are also pursuing university studies this year alongside their school studies. So I'll be working with those students. The QCE, Shane mentioned the QCE a moment ago. One of my roles is to help watch students' progress in working towards the Queensland Certificate of Education, or the QCE. And it might be helpful for students to know that all Year 12s have a learning account with the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority. And this is where their progress in accruing credits towards their QCE can be monitored. It's where any vocational qualifications that a student might be working towards should by now be recorded. And it's where they will retrieve their final results in December. So students will be regularly logging into that learning account in senior prep classes this year. But it's certainly helpful to know that they do have that up and running now. Towards the end of the year, though, they'll obviously have this learning account that they'll be managing. They'll also have their QTAC application if they are seeking to apply to tertiary studies. And they'll also have something called an ATAR portal where they'll retrieve their ATAR in December. But we'll certainly talk a lot more about that as the year progresses. QTAC, of course, is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre, and students will become very familiar with the QTAC website through lessons in EPP and Chatcom. I'm actually speaking with Year 12s next week in our Chatcom session about some of the ways that they should be searching for courses, both through QTAC and also through university sites. Students will all receive a guide from QTAC, which will list all courses available to them in Queensland in Term 3. That is quite a lengthy document, but students look forward to receiving that so that they can start investigating courses a little bit more thoroughly. But certainly I would like to think that they've started that journey long before Term 3. QTAC will address students in September, and that address will talk about how to apply to QTAC. Prior to that, though, we will have done some of that work in class to make sure that they're really quite confident with that process. I guess one of the key dates for Year 12s is definitely the end of Term 3, when QTAC recommends that all students have their preferences in. You can change preferences after that date, but there will be some courses out there that are making offers any time from September. So it is quite important that students do have those preferences lodged as soon as possible, towards the end of September. September also, more information will come out on scholarships. I do run a scholarship information session, but certainly I'll be communicating information on those as the year goes by. I did have a question earlier that was asked by a parent about deferring from studies and gap year programs. Deferral is a fairly simple process that students go through when they are offered a course place in December or January. We will certainly talk about that later on in the year. QTAC will certainly talk about that, but it is something that certainly students will be briefed on. And it's certainly, I guess, the recommendation if a student does know that they want to take some time off between school and tertiary study. The best advice is to defer rather than simply not to put in a QTAC application. In terms of gap year programs, and by gap year programs I mean commercial programs that were there pre-COVID. There are a number of opportunities for students, say, to go overseas for 6 months, work overseas. They are not being advertised at the moment, but as they start to emerge, hopefully this year, I will communicate information on those through the newsletter and through emails to students. The EAS is something that students will also hear about once QTAC addresses them in September. The EAS is administered by QTAC. It's known as the Educational Access Scheme, and it's designed for students whose learning may have been impacted in Year 12, and for those students who feel that their results have been impacted by something outside their control. That is certainly something that we'll talk to students about later on in the year. It's important though that students understand that they can't apply for this until they submit their QTAC application in September, and it is something that students are responsible for. CHAT cannot apply for EAS on behalf of students. It is something that they will do when they actually apply through QTAC for their courses. Some students, of course, will be pursuing work pathways next year. And so I can also provide all sorts of resources to various job boards for apprenticeships and, of course, resume advice. Students will have a resume that is stored in their student secure area of CHAT careers. They prepared that in senior prep in Year 11. And we will encourage them this year in senior prep to go back and review that resume. You know, please do talk to them about that and the importance of keeping that up to date. In terms of particularly apprenticeships, students should be actively seeking opportunities come term 3, or certainly the latter half of term 3, when some of the bigger employers do start advertising those apprenticeships. Yeah, look, I would certainly ask any student that's perhaps pursuing that pathway to make contact with me fairly early this year so that we can start working on their employability skills and all the documentation that they might need. On the screen, I have a couple of thoughts about the role of parents in terms of helping guide students' post-school planning. Probably the most important point for me is the one at the bottom, which I have to remind myself of regularly. It's very tempting for some students to take the easy option and enrol in a course that perhaps, you know, I've suggested or a parent has suggested. But it's really important that they do their research, their own research, and that they do take ownership of their post-school planning. So I will be talking to them a lot, certainly this term, about course searching, how to use university course pages. So please do be assured that they are developing these skills, but certainly do encourage those conversations and do encourage students to really take ownership of this planning. Some of the resources available to parents and students obviously include the CHAT Careers website. Parents can log into that using the internet, the web address you can see on screen. Students do have their own portal within that site, but a lot of the general information is open to parents. That's where you will find scholarship information throughout the year, information on registration for key assessments, and you can see there that I've mentioned UCAT, which is a test that any student who is considering medicine needs to enrol in. I think it's next month. I actually will be talking to students upon their return to school next week about UCAT, but that's where that sort of information is communicated. It's where any sort of news from universities is published, and of course it's where parents and students can make bookings to come in and have a conversation about students' plans for next year. There is a book and appointment tab that's fairly easy to use. So please encourage students to reach out at any point this year to make an appointment to have a conversation. I automatically meet with all Year 12s in Term 3, but they are certainly welcome to see me at any time in the lead up to that Term 3, which becomes very important in terms of identifying and ordering preferences for QTAC. Other sources of information, of course, include the college newsletter, which I endeavour to write for each fortnight. And of course, essential emails will be addressed to both parents and students. My contact details there are on the screen. Parents are obviously welcome to reach out with any questions at any time. Similarly, please encourage students to make a time if they want to have a conversation this term. Otherwise, as I said, I will meet with them in Term 3. Term 2 can get a little bit busy with Year 10 conversations. So do make sure that students start reaching out at this point in time. Thank you. I'll hand back to Mel.
Thanks, Penny. At the Parent Information Evening last year, you heard about access arrangements and reasonable adjustments. Oops, there we go. Or ARA, which are provided to minimise barriers for students who have a disability or condition that may affect their ability to participate in timed assessment. Kate Horton puts together ARA applications and corresponds with families. Please note that the college must abide by the decisions of the QCAA for adjustments that are provided, as we need to have the QCAA approve all of these. If additional documentation is required for students who have applied for ARA, either Kate or I will be in contact with you. If you do have any further questions or believe that your child would benefit from accessing ARA, please contact either Kate or I straight away, and we will run you through the process and documentation that you will need to provide. A component of ARA is illness and misadventure, and this is when an illness or an event is unforeseen and beyond the student's control, such as the death of a family member. An illness and misadventure application cannot be made for the same condition or circumstance for which QCAA ARA has been approved, unless it can be demonstrated that a significant deterioration or complication of the condition has occurred that diminished the student's performance in that assessment. Illness and misadventure can apply to both internal and external assessments, and in both cases, detailed documentation is required. For internal assessment, it is vital that the college adheres to that students adhere to the college's assessment policy, ensuring that non-timed assessment, such as assignments, are submitted on time. If illness and misadventure affect your child's ability to submit an assessment piece on time, please contact me as soon as possible to discuss the requirements for seeking an extension. In Units 3 and 4, which is currently what your children are doing now, the college must declare all extensions to the QCAA. So we need to ensure that students qualify for extensions and that we have all the required documentation. For timed internal assessments, such as exams, if a student is too ill to sit an exam, please inform me or Shane Bowden, the Director of Data and Strategy, as soon as possible. Students must complete all assessment, so arrangements for a comparable assessment will be made for students to sit, in this case of illness and misadventure. And again, detailed documentation is required. For external assessment, illness and misadventure also applies. So this is the external exams in Term 4, starting in October and then moving through to November. Students do need to attend every exam, but if a student is unable to sit an exam due to an extreme and unforeseeable event, significant documentation is required and there is no alternative arrangement or opportunity to sit the exam at a later date. As mentioned earlier, illness and misadventure applications cannot be made for the same condition that ARA has already been approved unless there is a significant deterioration or complication in that condition that has affected the child's ability to perform to their best in that assessment piece. If a child falls ill during an exam, they need to inform the external assessment supervisor of the illness as soon as possible. A submission for illness and misadventure can be made by the school or the student, and if an unforeseen circumstance does occur, we will work with you, ensuring that you understand the process and the evidence required for an illness and misadventure submission. We did have one question earlier about COVID, and I have snipped and pasted an excerpt directly from the illness and misadventure fact sheet that can be found on the QCAA website. It says that the QCAA will issue further advice for students who are showing symptoms that may be related to COVID-19 closer to the assessment time, so we will watch this space. As mentioned earlier, no alternative arrangements for external exams can be made if a student does not attend a scheduled written exam. We had a question about this specifically and had sort of what happens there. In this case, and only if illness and misadventure has been approved, the QCAA will award a grade for the student, and this is generated by the average score of similarly ranked students across Queensland. This is calculated by the QCAA, and the college has no control over this calculation or the awarded mark. Especially in their last year, it's all about finding a balance. While the study demands do increase, Year 12 is a year that should be memorable, a time for creating great memories and cementing long-lasting friendships before they all head out into the world beyond school. Each year, when past students return to the college at our Honours Assembly and address the student body, they emphasise the importance of continued involvement in extracurricular activities, spending time with friends and family, and some time out of study. Organisation is key here to ensure that all of these requirements can be fit in and students have some downtime as well. Okay. If you or your child have any issues or concerns, please do reach out. In the first instance, encourage your child to address the problem themselves. They should contact their homeroom teacher or relevant subject teacher in the first instance, and this can be either in person or via email if they feel more comfortable. After this, the next point of call is the appropriate head of faculty or head of house. After this, please do feel free to contact me either by phone or email. I'll put up here for you now some contact details of key staff, and I will leave this slide here. As we finish off, we will keep the chat open, so please do feel free to post questions. Thank you very much for your time tonight and listening.